You're listening to Words About Books, the only book podcast on the entire internet that claims to be talking about books, but really we're not. I am, of course, your host, Nate, and unfortunately, Ben and I had a falling out. We recently got paid, and because of how Stripe does things, they took a cut, and we ended up getting paid $5.23, and Ben and I couldn't decide who should get that extra 1 cent, and so, I had to pull rank, and I had to go, and I had to fire him. And so I've replaced Ben. It was very easy. So joining me today is James, who is, I'm just going to call New Ben. How's it going, New Ben?
If anything, Ben was the old James. Well, thanks to me, Words About Books is a extremely well-spoken podcast, thanks to my theatrical training.
Yeah, Ben. Why don't you have any theatrical training?
He's never been in any kind of a play at all.
Yeah, he was really a disappointment. I'm glad that I pulled rank and I fired him.
Pennsylvanians. You've given him a penny for his thoughts, or something like that.
So, today, we decided we're going to talk about James Bond. It's a very popular book series, but, have you read any of the James Bond books? Because I haven't.
Me either, no.
Yeah, no.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has read them, actually. I think that they get written, and then they were adapted into movies, and that's what happened.
Well, I think some people still go back and read the Ian Fleming ones, but there have been other novels. I know a guy named Raymond Benson wrote a bunch of them, a few other continuation authors, and I don't know if anybody reads those.
I didn't even know those existed. I thought it was only Ian Fleming all the way.
Yeah, no, the Fleming died in the mid-'60s. He actually died only after, right after Goldfinger opened, so they got some more people over the decades to write more Bond books, but none of them that I know of have ever been really adapted for film. If they make films, they draw on the Fleming.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, that probably tells you what you need to know about those books.
So we're not going to read those. Instead, we watched every single Bond film like 8 years ago.
Well, I have watched through the entire Bond series 3 times. I've seen every Bond film except the newest one multiple times. So, any lapses in Bond knowledge that Nate displays, I can compensate for.
Yeah, I've only seen most of these once, and I actually have not seen the latest one, which is,
No Time to Die.
Okay, I was gonna say Die Another Day, but that was The Last Brosnan. So I think that we were originally gonna talk about our tops and bottoms, but I guess we just decided we're gonna just
talk about your bottom.
I'm a power bottom. It's what I do.
We're just gonna talk our way through the series, isn't that what you suggested?
Yeah, I figured, fuck it. You've already clicked on this. We already got your view. Now this is just for us. This is for our enjoyment. So we're going to go through the entire Bond series, including, I say, let's throw in the 2 non-canon shitty ones.
Well, I'll dispute their relative shittiness, but yes, we can throw those in.
Okay. So I just want to start at the top with Dr. No.
Dr. No.
What do you know about Dr. No?
Well, I know that it takes almost 80% of the way through that film for him to actually appear, and yet it still works very well because it's a very modest Bond film. It's probably the most modestly scaled Bond film. 1 major location, fairly tight cast, fairly tight story, brisk running time. And it's mostly a fairly tight little spy mystery that's got a few of those Bond touches of sex and snappy one-liners like, Bond drives up to a British embassy with a dead villain in his car, and he tells the guard in front of the building, make sure he doesn't get away.
Yeah, I wrote the same thing, that based on my notes from like 9 years ago. There's a mystery to the plot. It feels really different from a lot of later Bond movies because you don't see Dr. No for a very long time. But everyone else is talking him up, like, this guy's a big deal. This guy's gonna fuck you up. You don't mess with Dr. No.
And when he shows up, he's a creepy dude. Like, he's got this very, very blunted, very deadpan effect. He's got these robotic hands that can crush stone.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, dude.
They show him, but they don't show his face, and he's crushing stones, right?
Well, I don't know if you see that, but later at the dinner table, he picks up like a lump of metal and just crushes it in his hand.
Yeah, that was something I wrote down. He has Bond captured.
Mm-hmm.
And then he feeds him poison to knock him out?
Well, what he does is... I think he does give him a drug drink, but he walks into Bond's room while Bond is sleeping, just pulls back the cover and looks at him for a moment. And we don't see his face while this is happening, so it's like really creepy.
I mean, I might do the same thing.
Yeah.
Sean Connery, I mean, yeah. He's a good-looking guy, despite the fact that his Bond is like a...
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we haven't even really gotten to the worst of that yet.
Nope, that's coming up, but... Yeah, and then at the end, don't they mention Spectre? Like, they just mention...
Yeah, Dr. No is a member of Spectre.
So, we'll look forward to how that pans out over the rest of the Connery films. It's definitely not gonna fizzle out and be really lame by the end of it, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, it's all a matter of taste. The special executive for intelligence, terrorism, revenge, and extortion. I think I got that right. So then we move on to number 2.
Yeah, which would be From Russia with Love, which...
I think was the first Bond film I saw.
I'm surprised I don't hear more people sing its praises. It's a really good film.
It's the Bond film that pretty much every really serious Bond person will put at or very near the top of the list.
And I did.
And I can't argue with that. Honestly, when I next go back through and rewatch all the films, I might move that into my top 3. Because it is a very, very good film, and it gets a little more exotic, a little more globe-trotting than Dr. No, but it still keeps things fairly grounded. It has your exotic sexuality, your locations like Istanbul and a trip on the Orient Express, and Bond hooking up with quite a few women. But it doesn't go too far. And then in the last act, you've got, Bond fighting with Robert Shaw's Red Grant in a train compartment. And then...
I didn't remember his name because he was probably the weakest part. He was the muscle.
Oh, but he's such good muscle. He's Robert Shaw, dude.
I'm not a film guy. I don't
know well, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here for
okay.
this one. And then you've got the fight against the helicopters, and you've got the fight on the Blake between the speedboats, and then you got the showdown in the hotel room with Rosa Klebb and her poison-tipped shoe.
Yeah, this one's great because Bond doesn't even know who his enemy is for most of the film. Spectre is just fucking around with him. He's trying to get him and the Russians to take each other out, and then they're gonna get a thing. I can't remember what the thing is.
It's a decoding machine. It's a MacGuffin, but...
Yeah,
but
basically.
There's a great bit when they're listening to... when back in M's office, everyone's listening to a tape between Bond and the Bond girl, and... she asks him if he's ever been with a woman anything like her, and he says, well, this one time M and I were in Philadelphia, and M just switches off the tape.
Yeah, I was a big fan of this, and probably my favorite Connery film. In fact, it is my favorite Connery film, for sure.
Alright, well then we move on to Goldfinger.
Which is what everyone says is their favorite, and I put it in my top 5, but I can't justify putting it at number 1. We go away from Spectre, right? Goldfinger's not part of Spectre, and... It also has one of the greatest Bond girl names ever.
Pussy Galore.
Yeah.
My mom always hated that.
Yeah, I know your mom, and I can't imagine why.
She loves Sean Connery, though.
That's weird. But yeah, so... Goldfinger...
I mean, I put Goldfinger at the top of my list, or at least the last time I went through the series I did.
My biggest problem with it was that Goldfinger should have won. He's so much better than Bond in that movie.
Well, yeah, and
he was leagues ahead of him, and he loses because of something he couldn't possibly have foreseen.
Yeah, no, Goldfinger is one of the best villains because he's got a hell of a plan. He's very savvy. Like, whenever Bond gets the upper hand, Bond only gets the upper hand because of Pussy Galore. If she hadn't changed sides, Bond would be fucked. Yeah. Bond almost is fucked. He comes within 3 seconds of being vaporized.
I thought it was... Oh, no, you're right. 7 seconds at the end.
Right.
3 seconds from the laser thing, right?
Well, when they first made the film, it was actually 3 seconds on the bomb counter. And then at the end, they were like, oh, wait, we can make this funny.
007.
Yeah.
And that's how Bond got his new moniker, Penis Galore.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we get to Diamonds Are Forever, we'll have a bit there, but, no. I mean, I just think that Goldfinger, it's got so much of the best, so much that's the best. It's got, Pussy Galore is, however you feel about the name, is a great character, and Honor Blackman plays her really well. Garrett Frobe is great as Goldfinger. It's got a great theme song, it's got a great hench villain, an odd job.
And it's got Sean Connery actually trying, which you don't really get after this film so much.
Well, it was after this film that he really wanted to start focusing on things that weren't Bond, and so his work as Bond suffered, but this, I think, was like... I'm not saying that the problematic aspects in Goldfinger make it better, but they make it perhaps the most quintessential Bond film.
Yeah, I don't think I would argue with anyone who says this is their favorite film, but for me, it was just the fact that I think Goldfinger should have just won.
Yeah. Alright, I can live with that.
So the next film is Thunderball. I forgot that. I thought it was going to be You Only Live Twice. But Thunderball is where they go after number 2 from Austin Powers.
I mean, they might as well have. Because the villain in Thunderball is really weak. Guy named he's Emilio Largo in this version. He's Maximilian in the remake.
He's got the eye patch, and he's Blofeld's number 2, and that's who the parody is in Austin Powers.
Right, and they steal missiles and hide them away in the Caribbean. And, there's a lot of underwater sequences that just go on forever.
Oh, and they're so slow.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I remember this now.
Yep.
And I remember being, really dreading the remake, and I think the remake didn't do any of that shit.
It did a lot less.
Yeah.
No, a lot of people still put Thunderball pretty high. I think it's it's on the lower middle of what?
My note says, 2 words, underwater scenes. And then there's a big, long, it's just zzz. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Oh, no. Oh, this is the movie where Bond leverages not ruining a nurse's career into sex with that nurse.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Swing and a miss, guys.
And this is also where Sean Connery, visibly starts giving less and less of a shit.
And it gets worse from here for Connery. You want to go into, You Only Live Twice?
Yep.
So, You Only Live Twice.
Hashtag YOLT.
This is the one where Sean Connery dresses up as a Japanese man.
And it's implied has some sort of surgery, too, I don't know, he literally does undergo surgery from a bunch of Japanese women in bikinis.
Yeah, because he's Bond. But then he, immediately blows his cover anyway.
Right.
So what's the point?
And he marries some girl, and he's told, she has the face of a pig. And we see her, and she looks perfectly normal. And...
Oh, yeah, and there are 2 Bond girls. One of them dies, and then gets replaced by the next one.
Right. Bond goes to Japan, and this is where we finally see Blofeld in person.
This is the best Blofeld out of all the 5 of them, in my opinion. Definitely out of the original.
Yeah, definitely out of the original. Donald Pleasance plays Blofeld, and he's genuinely creepy.
Yeah, he's got some menace.
He's also got a huge scar over one eye. And he's got his white cat. Well, he's always had the white cat, but he's also got, like, the Mao suit.
Yeah, you have to do your best to not think of Dr. Evil when you're looking at him.
Mm-hmm. And I will say this much for You Only Live Twice, because it's one of my least favorite films in the series, because it's really pretty boring.
I put it in my bottom 3 initially.
I mean, I couldn't really argue that much against it, but it does have my favorite Bond theme song. Like, that is a genuinely beautiful song. It's a wonderful song. The movie itself, I don't give a shit about. But...
And then Connery, he stopped giving a shit. He was out, and we got George Lazenby.
Whoa. We got, in between that, before we get to that, we gotta get to non-canonical film number 1.
Oh, I didn't know where we were putting that.
If we're going chronologically, it came out the same year as You Only Live Twice.
So, Casino Royale, not the one with Daniel Craig that you're thinking about, but the one with David Niven and a bunch of other people.
And Peter Sellers, Ursula Andress.
Woody Allen as Jamie Bond, Jimmy Bond.
Yup. Yeah, it's a Bond spoof that has a bunch of different plot lines because... Well...
Wasn't it a bunch of different films? And they're like, oh shit, let's get David Niven in here.
Well...
And he'll kind of tie them all together.
The whole story is very complex, and I don't remember all of it, but...
He creates a bunch of different James Bonds.
Right,
Sean Connery is not in it, but someone pretending to be him explodes, and David Niven was like, well, that's a guy who's basically playing me.
Mm-hmm. It has 5 credited directors, I think.
It feels like 5 different films.
Yeah, it's borderline incoherent.
It's my least favorite Bond film.
I don't think of it as a proper Bond film. It's a Bond parody, and I think it's got some enjoyable moments, but it's also a huge mess. Like, it's also got a good theme song itself, The Look of Love, which is a nice song, but...
And it ends with absolute chaos. It's like a Monty Python skit where
more
and more stuff gets thrown in there. I think everyone explodes at the end.
You've got a dog with a 007 collar, or a seal with a 007 collar, and then they all die.
Yeah. Which is a redeeming part
of
that
and Orson
film.
Welles is in it. Don't forget Orson Welles as the chief.
I don't even remember the plot, because all I remember is David Niven is like, I'll come out of retirement, and I'll just make everyone Bond, and there's a bunch of different Bonds, and one of them, like, dies, and, like, we never see him again. And...
is that because the actor quit the movie?
Yeah, and it's like, oh, alright. I'm sure they were like, well, we gotta use the footage, right?
Yeah, no, it's a film where you can definitely tell they were, like, piecing it together from what they had.
Yeah, I think you told me that they got David Niven later. And he was basically just there to kind of like,
try and stitch it together.
Yeah, we're gonna segue into the next scene.
Funny enough, David Niven was actually, I think this was before they even made, like, Dr. No. Ian Fleming wanted him to play the role.
Huh.
Yeah.
He's my least favorite Bond.
He's apparently a really nice guy, though. My mom met him, said he was really one of the nicest people she ever met.
And they had a little toss in the hay. No big deal.
Ew.
So now do you want to move on to Lazenby?
Yeah, on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
And I went into this, I heard a lot of bad stuff about it, mostly because people didn't like Lazenby, and I thought this is a pretty good film, It's
a very good film.
It's just different from Connery. Lazenby has a wife, which Connery I could never see having, ever. Films.
And it's coming straight from the book, too, which I think is generally regarded as one of the best of Fleming's books. But, it is a very different Bond film. At the time, it was the longest Bond film, and it has a very epic-scaled story. It's got a lot of issues, like, Lazenby himself is he's pretty wooden at times, like...
Yeah, and
he was trying to learn how to act as they made the film.
And people give him shit, and it's like, well, I don't hate Lazenby, it's just, he only had the one film. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I bet he would have been better if he got a few more films, but he made the horrible mistake.
Right.
I think the story was like his agent said, you got to get out of this. It's not going to go anywhere. And he was like, okay, fine. Yep. And then he later was like, yeah, that was a terrible mistake for my career.
He also, like, basically alienated everyone on the set of the film. And so, yeah, no, he was a dick. He was a dick. It also suffers from Telly Savalas' Blofeld, which he's not a good Blofeld.
No. Why did Blofeld change every single time?
That I don't know. I don't have an answer for you on that.
Yeah, they really needed to just get the guy from the last movie. He was the best thing about that movie.
Yeah, I wish I knew what happened there. I don't. On the other hand, they had Diana Rigg as Tracy DiVincenzo, who becomes Tracy Bond, and she's very, very good.
Yeah, and Bond actually loses in this, kinda, because his wife gets killed by, I don't know who it was. Frau is who it is in.
Bunt.
Okay, yeah, Frau is the Austin Powers caricature of her. And the biggest problem with this film is that it's definitely building to something, and then Lazenby leaves and Bund dies. The actress dies.
Yep.
And so the next film is like, well, let's just move on like it didn't happen. We go back to Connery, and the wife is kind of just swept under the rug, and we don't get the satisfying conclusion to On Her Majesty's Secret Service to whatever that was building to.
Yeah, and originally it was actually On Her Majesty's Secret Service was supposed to end with Bond and Tracy driving away from the wedding, and the second film was and the film after that was supposed to open with her death. But I think they already knew that Lazenby wasn't coming back, so they just didn't. And then that brings us to Connery's return to the role.
Yeah, and I opened my notes that just say, good God, do I miss George Lazenby, because Sean Connery clearly did not give a shit at this point.
Diamonds Are Forever, which was also one of the first Bond films I saw. It was like, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and this one were the first three I saw. I saw them well before I saw any of the others. And, Bond goes to Vegas.
Yeah, and he doesn't care that his wife is killed, and this is the end of Blofeld, essentially. He makes one appearance at the beginning of another film to be dropped into, like, a nuclear reactor.
We'll get into that.
He's just gone forever. Like,
well, that gets into a whole other thing, which we'll get into when we get into the remake of Thunderball.
Do you have anything more on Diamonds Are Forever?
Jimmy Dean is better at making breakfast sausage than he is at acting. Also,
oh my God, that's the actual Jimmy Dean.
Mm-hmm. Also, holy crap, it has some of the worst special effects in the whole series. Oh, and there's a character who's in
Do you want to say why it has the worst special effects?
Oh, because they had to cut the effects budget to make room for Connery's salary.
Yeah, because they couldn't get anyone else for this one but Sean Connery, who doesn't give a fuck.
Oh yeah, no, he's totally checked out. And there's a character named Plenty O'Toole, and he says, named after your father, perhaps? Okay, moving on.
Alright, so now we're done with Connery. In the main line of Bond, Connery's out, and then our man Roger Moore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, some people tend to not like him because he seems to be a less serious Bond, but his movies are kind of like, it varies.
Yeah, they're very...
He's got really high highs and like really low lows.
I think he tried. I think he gave it his own spin.
I agree.
His own interpretation.
And I appreciate they didn't just try to be Connery.
Right. But his first film is one of the weakest in the whole series.
This is Live and Let Die, right?
Live and Let Die.
And you rank this in like your bottom three.
I think I might have to. It really...
even though Paul McCartney has that sweet song.
Say live and let die.
Yeah, the theme song is by a mile the best thing about it. The rest of the film is shit.
Is this the one...
It's the one that tries to be a blaxploitation film.
Okay, but is this the one where the croc gets him, or is that the next one? And does he go on a hoverboat with that southern yokel? Oh my god.
Yeah, that's the one with the endless boat chase.
The endless boat chase. Oh my god. Yeah, that was really bad. I remember thinking like, okay, it's over now. Oh, no, they're still going. Okay.
And
it's like a 12 or 15 minute like boat chase.
And it just and you got the character Sheriff J.W. Pepper, who is just this broad Louisiana sheriff who has like a huge wad of tobacco in his jaw at all times, and he's just not funny and annoying as hell. And they brought him back in the next movie.
Okay, wait.
Which is set mostly in Thailand. What?
I'm reading my notes because I actually liked this film apparently when I read it. And yeah, I said like a 20-minute boat chase, almost 30 minutes. And okay, so the main villain is a corrupt prime minister who started a shady business deal with a New York gangster who also happens to be himself? Plot twist? Is that real?
Yeah. Dr. Kananga is also Mr. Big.
Is this the guy that... Oh, he does! He's the guy that gets blown up like a balloon.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, I can't in good conscience put this in the bottom 3. I think this would be a much, much better film if you just cut the boat chase.
It also is the only Bond film to directly hint at the supernatural.
Oh, is this Baron Samedi?
Yeah!
Oh, yeah!
Who comes back from the dead at the end, and you've also got the heroine who's like a tarot priestess.
Yeah, he comes back to dead in the video game, too. They're back from the dead, yeah. So what the hell is next?
The Man with the Golden Gun.
Oh, yeah.
With Christopher Lee.
I liked that one.
It's another one where the highs are high and the lows are low.
For sure. Yeah.
Like, they bring back J.W. Pepper for some reason on vacation in Thailand.
He doesn't sound like the kind of person who'd go to Thailand.
No.
He doesn't sound like the person who would go anywhere except the American South.
Yeah, and when he's in Thailand, he's really racist.
I think he's really racist just wherever he goes.
Oh, that's true. But he mainly goes to Thailand to be racist to the Thai people. And at one point, his wife wants to get a wooden elephant doll, and he's like, Maybelle, we're Democrats. But, yeah, Man with the Golden Gun, the thing about Christopher Lee's character has 3 nipples, and Bond, quote-unquote, tries to fool another character by wearing a rubber nipple.
Yeah.
And then he says, I guess he found me quite titillating.
But,
Yeah. No, it's...
There's also a little person.
Her Vilshais, yeah.
For some reason.
Who is most famous for being on Fantasy Island.
I guess I ranked it probably higher than I would now. It's in my top 10.
Oh,
I don't know if I'd go that high now.
Yeah, no, it's not that good, but it's not that bad.
I think that really, if you do anything, you just watch the ending fight, because that's pretty good. They built up Scaramanga.
Yeah, Scaramanga's a good villain.
Yeah, they build him up as, like, he's a legitimate threat, he's gonna get Bond, and the duel, it delivers. But the rest of the film, I don't think I would...
It's just pretty forgettable.
Yeah.
It's Bond trying to do the Kung Fu movies, and...
I feel like they did a lot of weird stuff with Roger Moore. They're trying all kinds of different stuff.
Well, this film was noted for being like a pretty big, kind of a flop, or at least a serious underperformer at the time. And so there was a slightly longer wait before we got to the next film.
Which I put in my top 3, I think. I loved The Spy Who Loved Me.
The Spy Who Loved Me is very, very enjoyable.
It's basically his version of From Russia with Love, in a way. They've got... The Bond girl is a Russian agent who, I think Bond killed her husband in the beginning.
Well, her lover.
Yeah, so they had tension, but they had to work together because third agency man... The villain's the weakest part, but they had Jaws. And Jaws is fucking great.
Richard Kiel, rest in peace.
I remember, like, he survives everything. And I remember... There was a car chase.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the back seat shooting at Bond. A guy was in the front seat shooting at Bond. Jaws ran out of ammo. He tossed his gun aside, reached over, grabbed the other guy's gun, and he started shooting at Bond. It was so great. And, you know, he would get in, like, a car crash, and he would just, like, stand up. He'd adjust his tie and walk away. And I loved it. He's a great villain. He's the best. And... I think you told me when we were watching it, originally he died, but test audiences hated it so much, so he ended up swimming away. I think he, like, bites a shark to death.
He bites a shark.
So, yeah, it's probably Roger Moore's best.
Oh, it's easily Roger Moore's best.
It's a great Bond film.
It gets that really good balance of extravagance, because you've got
It's like an ocean lab or something?
Yeah, an ocean lab and a submarine kidnapping operation. And Bond doing a ski jump with a Union Jack parachute. And
is this the one where Jaws, he falls from the sky without a parachute, lands in a barn, and that's Moonraker?
That's Moonraker.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a second. No, this one, it also has one of my other favorite Bond-themed songs, Nobody Does It Better.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Highly recommend.
And then we move on to Moonraker.
Yeah, well, you can't win them all. Jaws
Bond
came
trying to do
back.
science fiction.
Yeah, there's more of that experimentation. Jaws came back, which is great. It's just a shame that the movie was terrible.
I don't think it's that bad.
I put it middle of the road. I put it number 16 out of 25, which was kind of
that I might put it about there, maybe even a little lower, but I find more things to enjoy in it than not.
Jaws does a heel face turn and he helps Bond.
Right.
And Bond saves the human race, and this is when I made the remark that he should be, like, given every medal ever. There should be a James Bond Medal of Excellence or something, like something named after him, because he saves everyone from extinction.
Yeah, and also Q gets the line, I think he's attempting re-entry, sir. When Bond is canoodling with the Bond girl at the end.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm glad you remember this.
I'm the movie guy. I'm also just the guy who remembers random things. You know, that's just who I am.
If acting skills were money, the Bond girl in this film would be in debt so large she could never pay it off in all of her lifetime.
Well, to be fair, Lois Chiles was getting over, like, the death of her brother.
Well, get over it outside of film.
Oh, God. I will say, one thing about Moonraker I do like is I actually like the villain in this one, Drax, because he gets some really good lines like, you appear with all the tedious inevitability of an unloved season. Or, yet again you defy all my attempts to devise an amusing death for you. Michael Lonsdale, he's got this French accent, so he really relishes the lines.
Yeah, he was better than the villain from the previous movie, who I don't even remember anything about, because he was, like, the least interesting part of that movie.
He was just there to hire Jaws, really.
Pretty much.
But yeah, Moonraker, it's not great, but I find more to like about it than I think a lot of people give it credit for. And then we move on to a film which was definitely an attempt to sort of get back to basics, because Moonraker was, one of the most over-the-top Bond films. For Your Eyes Only.
Okay. Nope, I can't remember what the hell this is about.
I'm
gonna have to look at my notes for that one.
It's kind of... Okay, a British ship sinks, it's got a decoder on it. The Russians want it, the British want it. And the villain is this, like, arms dealer who,
Oh, wow, my notes even say I have a hard time writing about this because I don't remember much about it.
Yeah, no, it's very drab. It's one of my least favorite on, like, a subjective level, because it's just... It's so muted.
How did you take out Jaws? Why wasn't he in this film? How about you hit him with a train this time and he survives a nuclear explosion? How great would that be?
Probably the most interesting thing about For Your Eyes Only
is that it had more underwater scenes. I'm reading this.
Yeah, and they had to be, like, very elaborately faked, because the Bond girl had, like, nasal issues, and I think Roger Moore, like, just couldn't do it, or was afraid of something. I don't know. I can't remember ever.
There was also a stupid scene where they had Bond tied up, and you think they'll drown him or throw him to the sharks, but instead they just drag him behind the boat at a casual pace.
Yeah, no, it's stupid.
They basically help Bond jet ski without skis, so I guess that was fun for him. I don't even remember how the movie ended, and I'm not sure I really care.
Bond throws the decoder off a cliff, and the Russian just sort of shrugs. Bond is like, that's détente, comrade. You don't have it, I don't have it. Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's dumb.
But it was a decoder from a British ship, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it was his property, his government's property to begin with.
Well, yes. The one thing I do like about that movie, there's a bit where Bond meets up with Q midway through, and Bond goes into a confessional and he says, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," and Q's posing as a Greek Orthodox priest, and he says, "That's putting it mildly, 007. That's a good line.
Yeah, I don't remember anything about this film. I remember less about this film than the next one, Octopussy, which I fell asleep for.
Octopussy is my guilty pleasure Bond movie.
He dresses up as a clown, there's a circus. What else happens?
He dresses up as a clown because the circus is there. Doesn't just dress up like a clown out of nowhere.
He should. I think we can all agree Roger Moore should walk around as a clown at Disney World.
Anyway, Octopussy, I will allow, is kind of a mess because it's got, basically two different storylines that don't really come together. Because you've got a mad Russian general who wants to start World War III, and you've got Octopussy who runs an acrobatic circus, and an exiled Afghan prince named Kamal Khan, and they're, trading Fabergé, fake Fabergé eggs, or something like that.
I can understand why I fell asleep during this film.
No, it's kind of a mess, but I also just find myself enjoying it whenever I watch it.
I'll have to rewatch it at some point.
It's like I said, it's my guilty pleasure Bond film. If you just sort of relax and just let the scenes happen, just go with the flow, it's a fun movie. It's just don't think about it too hard.
So, before we wrap up Roger Moore...
We've got one more Connery.
We've got the remake of Thunderball, which is better because there's less underwater scenes.
And
wait, hold on. When does Blofeld die?
Oh, yeah, he was in For Your Eyes Only. Yeah, at the very beginning of the film, Bond is visiting Tracy's grave, and then he gets called away in a helicopter, and it turns out the helicopter is being controlled by a bald man in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Whose face we never see. But that was because there was an extensive debate and a lot of litigation over who owned the rights to certain aspects of the franchise. And so a man by the name of Kevin McClory got the remake rights to Thunderball and basically got the rights to Blofeld for several years.
Hey, future Nate here. You can tell because I'm clearly using a much better microphone that doesn't make me sound like a nasally douche. Interestingly enough, while I was looking some stuff up about this particular movie and who had the rights to Blofeld, I found that the original villain who was going to hire Jaws in The Spy Who Loved Me was going to be Blofeld, and someone pitched a fit, there was a lot of legal issues, so that's why we ended up with generic random guy who no one really remembers or cares about. I think it would have been nice to have Blofeld in there, but the star was really Jaws. Here is a recording of how I imagine the negotiations went when MGM just said fuck it and got rid of the Blofeld character.
Mr. Bond! Mr. Bond! We can do it here! Put me down! Put me down! Oh, you want to get off? Mr. Bond!
And
so
that's
they
what-
decided to kill someone who may be Blofeld, but you don't ever see him.
And he just makes,
Is it just like a petty move? Like, oh, okay, fine, fuck you. We're gonna kill him.
Yeah, but Blofeld appears in Never Say Never Again. That's Connery's return to the role.
Yeah, and that's where we're at now.
The remake of Thunderball that McClory finally got off the ground.
I remember this wasn't so bad.
It's got some really silly, campy moments that I don't love, but it's got good things as well. Like Klaus Maria Brandauer as Largo is really pretty good. The game where he and Bond play a video game,
Yeah.
that's a little...
Instead of poker, they play a video game.
Yeah, with electric shocks.
Yeah, that's dumb.
And the...
But Connery seemed to, like, be trying a little more.
A little more. It also has Rowan Atkinson as a character named Nigel Small Fawcett.
Because of course.
I mean, it's Rowan Atkinson in a Bond movie,
He should have just been a Bond. Just one
Johnny
movie.
English?
Well,
Are you
yeah.
forgetting Johnny English?
Yeah, but that's not official Bond. He needs the official title.
But yeah, Never Say Never Again, it's uneven. A lot of it's kind of silly, but there are things in it worth enjoying.
Was Blofeld in this one?
Very briefly, Max von Sydow plays him, and he shows up in a couple of scenes.
So he got the guy got the rights to Blofeld and then barely uses him. Was he planning on making another film?
I think the film was heavily cut down, or like, it had a very troubled production. I think it may have been cut down fairly last minute.
So the villain is number 2.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
he's number 1, and Blofeld is like number 0, I guess.
Oh, I think actually I read in the books that Blofeld would change between number 1 and 2 to confuse his enemies. Ooh. Are we on to A View to a Kill and Roger Moore's really weird eyes?
Got a great theme song. Not a very good movie.
Now, is this the one with Mayday?
Yes.
And Christopher Walken?
As the villain.
Yep.
And computer chips. Yeah, no, it's, some people have said this is kind of an unofficial remake of Goldfinger because the villain, where Goldfinger wanted to corner the market on gold, this guy, Christopher Walken, wants to corner the market on silicon chips. Which, woo. Yeah, it's not very good. Roger Moore has this bit early on where he looks at somebody way too intently.
He's got weird eyes.
Like
This
your-
whole film.
Like your creepy uncle.
Yeah.
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 He was 57 at the time they made that film, which...
And like the Bond girl is like under half his age or something.
Yeah, he was older than her mother.
Nice.
And that was when he was like, okay, I think I need to retire. Christopher Walken is a decent villain. I will give him that. And it's got an awesome theme song.
This is a good time to point out we decided to call Bond entering a hotel room. Okay, now it's time to play a game of sex or assassination attempt. Apparently, he had a habit of going into hotel rooms, and it's either going to end in sex or violence.
And sometimes both.
Yeah, I think the only thing that really stood out in this was the fact that Christopher Walken was like a psychopathic asshole who was just so over the top. And that's the only reason I remembered this film.
I'm happiest in the saddle. Well, that's it for Roger Moore.
Is Roger Moore, does he have the most Bond credits still?
I think he does, yeah. Because Connery had 6, and 1 unofficial. Moore had 7.
Suck it, Connery.
I mean, Moore, kept trying right up to the end, even if he was too old.
Yeah, I'll give him that. He didn't just phone in his last 3.5 films.
So then we move on to...
My man, Timothy Dalton.
who I think might be at least the most underrated Bond. And
For sure. He was doing something way different from his predecessors.
Mm-hmm.
His films had a much different feel than them.
he was...
And I wish he would have gotten more films to show what he could do.
Well, he was... Well, we'll get to that in due time, but... He was definitely trying to get back to the original Ian Fleming character. He was definitely trying to be more hardcore.
Yeah.
And
he succeeded. Mm-hmm. That dude was fucking intimidating.
And The Living Daylights, which also has an awesome theme song by Aha. That was his first one. And for a long time, that was one of my favorites. It's gone downhill on my list in recent years, but it's still... I think it's got good things in it.
Yeah,
like, namely him.
I put it as upper middle pack. It wasn't in the top 10 for me, but I think for me, really, Timothy Dalton's what carried the film for me. Because I don't even remember the villain, and as I'm looking over here, it's like, oh yeah, the villain's really bland.
Yeah, well, you've got two villains, one of whom is pretty bland, played by Jeroen Krabbe, who's this Russian who's supposedly defecting, but not really. Or he's supposedly defecting, but what he's really defecting to is just general supervillainy. But the other villain is Joe Don Baker as an American arms dealer, and he at least chews the scenery a bit. And then you've got Jonathan Rhys Davies as a Russian officer, Soviet officer, who's, a good guy. And, that's okay, I guess.
Yeah, but really, let's get to the main event for Timothy Dalton.
The next one.
License to Kill.
Which is in my top 3.
It's in my top 3 as well. It's a great movie. I can't believe people... I think there's a stigma around Timothy Dalton as Bond, and people probably just don't even watch the movie, because this movie's great.
It's kind of Bond doing Scarface. And it's also got one of the best villains is Robert Davi as Franz Sanchez.
He makes you hate him. You want to see Bond murder this guy at the end.
Well, because he has Felix Leiter and his wife attacked on their wedding day, and the wife dies, and Felix Leiter, loses an arm and a leg.
I thought he loses the lower half of his body to an alligator.
I forget if it was an alligator or a shark.
I wrote down alligator.
Well, he definitely gets fucked.
He gets ruined, yeah. And Bond actually has to go undercover. Mm-hmm. He has to
he goes rogue.
Yeah, he goes rogue. He goes under deep cover, and he fucks this guy up. And it's so satisfying to see him ruin this villain's day.
The final section of this movie, there is a chase on a dangerous mountain road between big rigs, and lots of explosions. Also, Benicio del Toro in an early role as one of Franz Sanchez's henchmen.
Yeah, doesn't he get fed into a grinder or something?
Yep, he gets fed into a cocaine grinder. And another dude gets blown up in a pressure chamber.
And the main villain gets lit on fucking fire. Mm-hmm. And that's when you stand up and you start clapping.
Yeah, and he runs into a leaking tanker truck while on fire. So he just gets wrecked.
Oh,
also, Q gets a pretty big role for once.
Yes, yeah, I wrote that down. Q finally gets a expanded role, and it's pretty great.
No, License to Kill is just... It also came out the year I was born, so...
And it's also a really good game type in the video game, because it's one-hit kills, buddy.
Well, that's your department. That I don't know about.
So, well, that's what we're about to get into, because unfortunately, I'm assuming this didn't do so well in the box office.
It didn't do great, but it was also, I think, various other issues, like Albert R. Broccoli, who had been the main producer for several years at this point.
Sounds like a fake name.
Cubby Broccoli, his health was failing, and he actually wasn't really involved in the production of the next film. They were going to do one more of Timothy Dalton. I think it was supposed to be called Property of a Lady, and that would have been 1991, but it didn't get off the ground. And so...
There's a long time between this.
6 years. And they had wanted Pierce Brosnan to step into the role anyway. They actually tried to get Timothy Dalton several times over the decades, and almost were going to get Pierce Brosnan instead, but he got stuck in a TV role.
Mm.
And so by this time, he was back. He was ready to step into the role, and he makes his debut in 95's Goldeneye.
So, this might be just my nostalgia talking, but I'm gonna try and defend this. This is my number one. This is my top Bond film ever. It's the first Bond film I ever saw. The video game is like a classic still. It's kind of hard to play with two sticks, so it doesn't quite hold up, but it's still a great game. And the game is really true to the film. And the film has a lot of great villains and characters that I could name all of.
Yeah, no, it's got a lot of good stuff in it. It's got an awesome pre-credit sequence, one of the best in the whole franchise.
Yeah, where you've got Sean Bean, who is definitely not going to die in this film, right? Right?
Well, I mean...
He dies twice.
Yeah, I mean, he gets shot in the head in the prologue, and even if they were using blanks, getting shot by a blank at point-blank range could still fuck you up. Like, the concussive force alone could probably...
Yeah, he's Sean Bean.
Okay.
No big deal.
Right. He also, Bond falls into an airplane.
Yeah, from a motorcycle. He jumps from a motorcycle
and he
into
just
the airplane.
falls faster than a plane which is plunging.
Yeah.
And then he pulls up.
It.
And then cue the Tina Turner theme song.
And then you've got the Bond girl, Natalia, who she goes from a nothing's really going on in her life computer programmer out in Siberia to kind of a badass. She helps get rid of Xenia. She outprograms
Xenia on top.
Yeah, of course. And then she outprograms Boris.
Alan Cumming is a weedy little Russian douchebag.
And then you've got General Armov, who was a great villain before
Sean Bean.
Before Sean Bean assumes that role.
Well, my favorite bit of Oromov is when Xenia on top shoots a room full of people, and she's clearly getting off on shooting people, and Oromov just looks at her like what?
Yeah, he's looking at her like, okay, all right. And then he's kind of a drunk, washed out general.
Yeah, there's a chase scene in Petersburg where he just keeps on swinging from his flask because, he's Russian.
Memorable characters. And the fight is personal, because this is, Sean Bean is Alec Trevelyan, his partner.
Like 006, something like that.
Yeah, they were friends.
And at the end, when Sean Bean is about to die for real, he says, "For England, James? No. For me."
Yeah, and then he drops him, and he survives the drop, only to have the entire satellite fall on top of him and crush him to death.
Now, it's a good one. It's a lot of fun. I do think your nostalgia is pushing it up the list for you, but, I'm not going to argue too hard against it.
And this also has Valentin. Is that how you say it?
Zukovsky?
Yeah, and...
Bobby Coltrane?
And, Jack Wade.
Oh, yeah, American. Joe Don Baker, one of the few people to play both a Bond villain and ally.
Yeah, it's my favorite Bond movie. It's by far the best Pierce Brosnan movie.
I'll go as far as say it's the only good Brosnan Bond movie.
Yeah, it's the only good or even passable Brosnan movie. And in fact, my least favorite movie outside of Casino Royale is the next movie, Tomorrow Never Dies, which is in your bottom 3 as well.
It's my number 2 worst.
And I think I asked you, what happened between GoldenEye, my favorite, and Tomorrow Never Dies, my least favorite of the mainline Bonds?
Well, basically they tried to rush it, and, I think they changed the casting for the main villain multiple times.
Oh, God.
And,
the main villain's like a newspaper
Yeah,
mogul.
He's Rupert Murdoch.
And I remember Bond has the line of, there are some British sailors that died, and he's talking to Rupert Murdoch, and he's like, they were out to sea, adrift, or something stupid like that.
That's very interesting, Mr. Bond. You have a vivid imagination for a banker. Perhaps I should commission you to write a novel.
Oh, heavens no, I'd be lost at sea. Adrift.
Talking to himself, but he's really talking about the sailors.
He's talking to the villain, and he's using these words in a different context, but it's just kind of like, I know that you did this, I'm coming for you. But it was so, like, fake sounding, like, not how a real person would say anything. It was awful.
The only good thing about that movie is the character of Dr. Kaufman, played by Vincent Schiavelli, who's like this weird German, like, ballistics expert who's hired to assassinate Bond, and he's like, I could shoot you from Stuttgart and it would have the same effect. And he's like, he's a fun character. But
don't defend this movie. This
no,
movie's
that's like
garbage.
the one.
It's awful.
It's a waste of Michelle Yeoh. She's the main Bond girl. Oh yeah, there's a bit where the villain, played by Jonathan Pryce, he like does a bunch of fake kung fu moves and like with the sounds in front of her, and it's just racist as hell.
Pathetic.
It's really bad.
Yeah, it's an awful movie. It was an awful video game as well.
I'll take your word for that.
0 out of 10. So let's move on to your least favorite.
The World Is Not Enough. I just find this movie just so boring. Like, it's also bad and cheesy, but I also find it incredibly boring. I don't care that Bond has, like, more feelings for the villain, because, spoiler alert, the villain is also the main Bond girl. Well,
Yeah.
They technically bring in another Bond girl who Bond can run off with at the end, but she doesn't show up for, like, half the movie. And it's just boring, and...
I actually put this above the next film, but yeah, let's see. She wants to kill M, and
Yeah.
they want to destroy all the oil pipelines in some region to get exclusive oil access, which, like, it's not how that happens, but...
I mean, we're seeing, like, the reason gas prices right now are spiking is just because of general uncertainty, not...
Yeah. The secondary villain is a guy with a bullet lodged in the pain center of his brain, making him immune to all pain.
Yeah, that's not medically sound, is it?
No, that's how that works. He's also immune to, like, emotional pain as well. You cannot break that man's heart.
I mean, that's not true. In the movie, he, like, totally catches feelings.
Well, maybe that was his weakness then. You couldn't hurt him physically, so you had to hurt him emotionally. The Green Goblin was right. I remember Valentine comes back.
He does, and he dies.
Yeah. It was a little better written than Tomorrow Never Dies. I don't think I would rank it above Die Another Day. Like, thinking back, like, that's probably just my bias.
We can argue that one, but the reason World Is Not Enough is at the bottom for me is it just has nothing to compensate for the bad parts. Nothing to compensate for the final line, I thought that Christmas only comes once a year.
Ha. Ha. What was the Bond girl? Was it Christmas Jones?
Yeah.
I mean, why not? Why not make that pun? You're already here. Oh god.
It's the one Bond film I never went back to just for fun.
That game was also subpar.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, we'll go to Die Another Day. I think I disliked this originally as a kid because the opening sequence where Bond gets captured and then is tortured for like 6 months. When Bond's a super spy, he would have been out of there in like 2 days.
Yeah.
I think it made him look really weak, but you know, there's actually some good stuff. There's like a really good like sword fight scene.
Oh yeah.
That was pretty cool. The sailing on the ice wave, not so much.
Yeah, it's a very early 2000s film. It's that was the year that Die Another Day went up against Triple X.
Oh,
yeah.
Ouch. Yeah, the times were definitely changing. Kind of the campier stuff didn't really land so well.
Like, you got the invisible car.
Yeah. And there's like an ice castle.
The ice castle.
And the villain he was either Chinese or
he was
Korean.
North Korean.
Okay, yep, there you go. So, North Korean guy who gets surgery to become white.
Mm-hmm. And he somehow, like, completely reinvents himself as a, diamond billionaire. It's got a cameo from Madonna. It's got Halle Berry as a Bond girl, which...
I put, and since this is a Pierce Brosnan Bond, he somehow finds a way to make the fight with the villain personal.
Does he?
Yeah, they had a thing. The main villain hated Bond a whole lot.
Yeah,
I don't remember why exactly.
Yeah, he models his white identity on Bond, concealing such inadequacy. It's like, no, Bond is not inadequate. That's the whole point of Bond. Yeah, Halle Berry won an Oscar while they were making that film, so she was the first Oscar winner Bond girl, and...
Yeah, but she didn't win it for being the Bond girl, so, 0 out of 10.
Yeah, no, she wasn't very good, I'm afraid. Oh yeah, and Die Another Day also has a subplot where you can get your DNA replaced.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see anything that's wrong with that.
The only side effect is that you get total insomnia, but you just have to wear this multicolored dreaming mask.
Yeah. No, that's how it works in real life. I don't know why you're making a big deal about this.
Also, a guy gets diamonds buried in his face.
I do remember that. Doesn't he just have them in his face?
Yeah, he just never gets them taken out.
No, this movie's not great.
It's not great.
Pierce Brosnan, he had one really great film and then, garbage.
He was the right Bond for the wrong time.
I agree 100%.
And then we have a 4-year gap before we come to the blonde.
God,
Bond.
was that only 4 years? It feels like the franchise was dead forever.
Well, for you and I, we went from being 12 to 16. So we went from middle school to midway through high school.
Damn.
So it was a big change for us personally.
So I don't remember a lot about the first 2 Daniel Craig films. I remember this is the one where he gets his balls beat. Yeah.
Yep.
Gets his balls beat. Judi Dench is still M, which is the right call.
Yes.
And he's gotta kill 2 guys to become a 00.
Well, he kills one of them in a bathroom, and then the other one in his office. And that's the prologue, is Bond earning his 00 status.
Doesn't he also get a wife in this one who also dies?
They don't marry, but they're planning on running away together. Vesper Lind.
Drowns.
Yeah, and it's kind of hinted she
betrayed him.
Well, she was forced to betray him, but she also may have killed herself. It's a very good movie. I think I overrated it a little bit when I first saw it because it was, it was a real return to hardcore serious Bond. But it did have those flashes of style and panache that you expect.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely overrated because, they're comparing them to, the last 3 films, which were all really, really bad. So they made it more realistic, more grounded, great. I wrote down, and this probably helps summarize my feelings because I haven't been a huge fan of Daniel Craig. And one of the reasons is because he never seems to be good at what he does. He kills people he shouldn't kill. And then we'll talk about a few movies, he's too old for his job. And so, I was never high on Daniel Craig as Bond.
I appreciate him a lot more. I think that maybe because to some degree this is my Bond, this is when I started watching the Bond films when they came out. I missed Casino Royale in theaters, but I saw his other 4 films all in theaters. So this is where I really started becoming... Because I think it was... When I started watching the whole series, it was around the time Casino Royale came out. They released a box set with the first 20 films, and so that was when I first watched them all. And then we move on to Quantum of Solace.
And that's in your top 3?
It was until No Time to Die. It's still in my top 5, for sure.
Oh, yeah, so Casino Royale ends on a cliffhanger where he shoots Mr. White?
Yep,
is that right?
Mr. White, yeah.
And that leads directly into Quantum of Solace.
Right, which begins with Bond taking White to a safe house for questioning.
Something about oil or water. Is water.
It's water, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, what I like about Quantum of Solace, not only is it, one of the more politically mature Bond films.
It's got action, excitement, drama, and James Bond killing people who he should definitely be taking alive for questioning.
There's probably some of that, but it's also got, hella style. Like, there's a sequence in an opera house that is one of my favorite Bond sequences ever. Like, the moment when Bond is standing, like, on the far side of the room and the villains are in the foreground, like, that is just chef's kiss.
And it's got Quantum, which was, I think, supposed to be a replacement for Spectre originally.
And then sort of
it just became Spectre.
Yeah. It's a flawed film, but I'll see how I feel about it when I next rewatch the series, but I have a definite soft spot for it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good.
It's very taut. Like, it's the shortest Bond film.
I can live with that. Some of these films are a little too damn long.
Yeah, no, for sure. But a lot of people didn't care for it, and so I think that led to, a 4-year break, or extended development for the next film.
Yeah, where it has the Joker as the villain. He's always got a plan within a plan.
Yeah.
He manages to time a subway train for exactly when it's going to burst through and save the day.
Yeah.
So the one
Skyfall.
thing, yes, Skyfall, and it feels like two different movies because it definitely starts with like there's a list of all the secret agents that it's gonna get leaked, and they never actually follow up on that lead. I assume
they
all
get
those agents
leaked
get
and
killed.
the agents get killed, but like it's just a means to an end, which is we got to shut down the villain behind this.
Yeah, and he hates M because he got disfigured, and he used to be a 00 agent himself.
Something like that.
And he owns an island or something.
Mm-hmm.
And
rats.
Yeah.
I mean, Javier Bardem as Silva is a really good villain. But the problem is that he's a little too omnipotent. Like you said, like the Joker.
They made him the Joker, I feel like. They didn't go all the way with it, obviously, but he definitely felt like it's the whole thing with like, oh, well, then the guy comes into the Gotham City Police Department with the bomb in his chest. He doesn't know it's in there, and then the phone goes off. He wanted to be arrested so he could steal all this money, and okay, he knew everything that was going to happen.
It gets a little heavy on the fan service as well, like when they bring out the Aston Martin. Yeah. I remember seeing that in the theater, and all the bros in the theater were just like, yeah!
Is this when they introduced New Q?
Yes, Ben Whishaw.
Yeah, it's just not the same. I don't dislike him, but like he's not gonna be able to fill old Q's role.
Well, Desmond Llewellyn was one of a kind, but I have a soft spot for Ben Whishaw because I actually saw him on stage as Hamlet, like right around the time he was first getting big. So I'll defend him. Yeah, Skyfall, it gets a little heavy on stuff like fan service, like the bit with Moneypenny at the end is really eye-rolly.
Oh, yeah. She shoots Bond on accident in the beginning.
And they don't identify her as Moneypenny until the very end.
Yeah.
Because for some reason Bond never learns her last name.
Because you need Moneypenny to be more than just a secretary for some reason. And you don't even need Moneypenny if you don't want her to be there.
I mean, they didn't have her in Casino Royale or Quantum.
Yeah.
But, oh god, what was I gonna say?
It ends with Home Alone, but with more violence.
Yeah, I mean, that I don't mind too much.
That's my favorite part of the film.
It's it's a very mixed bag. There's also, like, another part I remember I really don't like, and I'm trying to remember exactly. Oh yeah, the old ways are the best. They really hammer that point home a lot, for some reason. And they're talking about how Bond is too old, even though we've got 2 more films of Craig.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. Again, Daniel Craig, his Bond can never seem to do anything right. And now he's too old. Yeah, he tries to retire at the beginning after he gets shot and falls off that train.
Right.
He's like at a bar just drinking himself to death.
Well, he's assumed dead, so he just lives completely off the grid for a while. And then for some reason he goes back. And some people put Skyfall at the top of the list, and I can't.
It's okay. I put it top of the middle.
Yeah. top of the middle's good. But then we move on to Spectre.
Yeah, so my favorite part of this was Dave Bautista, because I thought he was going to be like New Jaws, where he just keeps coming back. He survives all sorts of crazy shit.
Well, we never do see him die.
Yeah, but he's just gone.
Right.
He flew out of the train, and I was just like, oh, okay, well, I'll see him at the finale. Oh, no, that was the last time we see him in the entire film.
It's a weird film because there's something that's played up to be, could have been the finale, and then it goes on for another half hour for the actual finale.
Yeah, it's got some weird pacing, and for some reason they bring Spectre back, and then they're like, we're tying it to all these other movies, and it's like, I haven't seen those movies in a really long time. Like,
this doesn't check out.
Yeah, you gotta... Maybe you shouldn't have.
Also, the Bond girl, Madeline Swan, Mr. White's daughter, she gets captured near the end in one of the silliest things ever. Like, she literally does not stick around with Bond and company for, 10 more minutes until they've gotten everything locked down.
But then he jumps onto a couch.
That's at the beginning.
And breaks his fall.
That's at the beginning.
Sure?
Yes.
Sure wasn't both. Because I swear that Blofeld, and Blofeld's the villain, spoiler, Blofeld is like, you'll never be able to save her on time, and he's like, watch me, there's a couch down there.
And then Bond, shoots down a helicopter.
Yeah, and... Okay, so Blofeld is like, he's the guy from Inglourious Basterds.
Christoph Waltz.
Okay, yep. And I think that's probably why they got him as the villain.
Yeah. And he does okay, but it's definitely like, they don't give him enough to really work.
No, it was the scripting that was like, you really should have given him something.
And I think it was the Sony Pictures emails leak, which was a real big deal around 2014. They were revealed that they were having a lot of issues with this movie. Like, they began without a finished script. And
maybe you should finish your script.
Yeah, I can't imagine starting a movie without a finished script, but that's just me.
So yeah, he's Blofeld, and he knows Bond personally.
Oh yeah. Bond, after Bond's parents were killed, Blofeld's father adopted Bond.
Yeah, this is our first time meeting this guy. It'd be like if in Spider-Man 3, Harry Osborn is like, Peter, we were friends, but you killed my dad. And also, this is the first time you're meeting me. So, and then he gets disfigured to look like Blofeld. He loses all his hair and gets the scar.
Well, he doesn't lose all his hair. Does he lose all his hair? I don't think he loses all his hair.
Maybe I'm misremembering that. I know he gets the scar, though.
He definitely gets the scar.
So, there's that.
Yeah, and then we move on to the film you haven't seen yet, which is No Time to Die.
Another Day. Oh.
No Time to Die.
Another Day. God damn it. Thanks for nothing, MGM.
Now, I loved No Time to Die. I keep it a bit vague, but it definitely completes an arc over all 5 of Craig's films.
And then he dies.
I wasn't gonna say that, but thanks, asshole. Yeah. Yeah, no, he dies. But it works. It doesn't feel like they're playing it for a gimmick. It actually pays off. So, in some ways, I think that's maybe why Craig's Bond is my favorite.
But he still gets to sail off with the girl as a corpse. Is that right?
I mean, there's no corpse left. He gets blown the fuck up.
That's pretty hot, right?
I mean, he does die while he's, on the phone with her. Yeah, no, it's good. Seriously, strongly consider putting it in my top 3. Because it's long, but it's got a really good story. It's got a lot of really good action. And it redeems Spectre in a lot of ways. They bring back Blofeld for one scene, and it's honestly makes up for, the questionable usage of him in the previous film. I won't say it's a perfect film, it's got its issues, but on the whole, I am a big fan of it. I think it's Craig's strongest film. I think it's one of the strongest Bond films overall.
So is Craig your favorite Bond?
I still think Dalton might be my favorite Bond, but I think Craig is the best.
My favorite is Pierce Brosnan, even though he only has one movie worth anything. I still look at him as that's a guy who is Bond. He's
Well,
got the look of
when
Bond.
you were introduced to the series, he was Bond.
Yep.
So he's your Bond in the same way that Craig really is my Bond.
Yeah, I think I'd push Craig down. Sean Connery is actually pretty low on my list of Bonds.
I always honestly break Connery up into two epochs. Early Connery and late Connery, because there is such a drop-off after Goldfinger. Yeah, I'd probably go something like Craig, Dalton, Connery, Brosnan, Moore, Lazenby.
Yeah, I think I'd have to put Lazenby at the bottom just because he had the one film to compare. I think I'd go Brosnan, and then probably Dalton.
Yeah.
And then I probably, I don't know. I feel like Connery probably does come next. If you split him in half, early Connery. You put late Connery right above Lazenby.
I put late Connery below Lazenby.
Yeah, that's fair. Because Lazenby, he's still trying, kind of.
I think he's right for that film.
Yeah, like I said, the real problem with that film is there was never any follow-up, and we just went back to Connery, and Connery doesn't give a shit about his dead wife.
Well, you can read more of my terrible opinions at ifyouwantthegravy.wordpress.com. And Nate?
Yeah, we've got an Instagram, which is Words About Books Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at WABpod. If you want to buy us a coffee and make me write an erotica for some reason, you could do that at buymeacoffee.com/WABpod. And yeah, I think that's it. It's been Nate and new Ben.
James.
Later.
Do-do-do-do-do.